So thank you all for having me here today. My name is Kristen Goshorn. I am 6'2", and I don't play basketball. I get asked that a lot, as you might imagine. But there is a story that I have to tell today that I usually don't share with people about the significance of that question to me. When I'm going to stand by the flag and make me more comfortable. It's tall, like me. So when I was little, I was also the tallest girl in my class. I'm speaking about third grade. There were two boys that were taller than me, but they were also very clumsy on the basketball court. So we had this after-school basketball intramurals, and I was the all-star. I can still hear my basketball coach or gym teacher's voice in my head, and he was an ex-Marine. He would yell, "The backboard is your friend," and things like shoot. He would yell, "Pass first, dribble second, shoot third," emphasizing the team element of the sport. I wanted to play for the NBA. I didn't want to play for the WNBA because nobody watched women's basketball, right? And I didn't feel like the girls really brought the same energy to the court. My grandma gave me a Bulls jacket in 1998. We were living here in Cook County, and it meant the world to me. Well, actually, it meant two things. First, that I was the favorite. And second, not really. I mean, who knows? We'll never know. But, and second, that I'd better remember to hang up my coat for the rest of eternity. My grandma grandma passed away last week, I should say. But I wanted to dedicate this speech to her because she had such a huge impact on my life. She was a short, strict Polish woman who loved a clean house and winning at cards, or my husband would say cheating at cards. So not long after she gave me the coat, which is hanging at my parents' house, it has a little rip in it, but it's still in pretty good condition. I found myself at Children's Memorial Hospital. Let's see. I was there with a team of pediatric cardiologists, and they study the heart. And the prognosis was pretty terrifying for my parents. I wouldn't be allowed to play any contact sport, including basketball, for the rest of my life. I wasn't allowed to do as much as a push-up, and just like that, my dreams of playing in the NBA, no matter how unrealistic, were suddenly gone, and I was left feeling, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So fast forward 20 years, I got a degree, a great husband who's taller than me, a great start in a career. That was a big concern for a long time. And we had a baby on the way, and I thought, what am I going to do now? Forward a few more years, and I've got two babies, both boys, well, one older than the other. My husband was working 12-hour days, and we're living in a city halfway across the country from all of our family. And postpartum mayhem is starting to rear its ugly head, and I thought, what am I going to do with my life now? So the point is that we all have these pivotal moments that shape us. It's usually not until we're in the shower at 9 o'clock at night, 30 years later, that things start to make a little bit of sense. So one of the last things that Grandma tried to teach me was how to talk to people. And I know what you're thinking, you're an adult, you should have this figured out by now, which is true. But Grandma, I would bring her to her doctor's appointments, and she would sit in the waiting room, and she'd find somebody to talk to, and she'd ask them their name, if they had any kids, talk about their family. And then after that person was gone, or after we had left, she'd have this little review session with me, like, did you see how I did that? This is what you do. And it was like, Grandma. She was wonderful. There she is. Isn't she cute? This is my son Xavier, my husband Eric, Grandpa, Grandma, and my son Hyatt. His birthday was 2 days ago. He's 4 now. Okay.
Your husband is enormous.
I'm breaking them. I've got to put this thing down. Yeah, he's pretty big. He could probably be a linebacker. He does jujitsu. He's real proud of that. And he's doing keto diet, which is awesome. He really highly recommends it. Now my mom's doing keto. Other members of our family are doing keto. It's like this big keto race. But that's not in the speech. Okay. Okay, so all this brings us to podcasting. For me, podcasting is about intentional conversations, deliberately going beyond the surface to discover the hows and whys of our world. It's the combination of artistry and technical prowess to produce not just engaging, but captivating communications that inspire learning and influence the world around us. And podcasting is changing the world. Right now, over the past 5 years, consumption of podcasts have increased by 157%. Right, so we're up 157%. 3 in 10 listeners in the United States listen to a podcast at least monthly, 1 in 5 weekly, and those numbers continue to rise. Right now, people who listen to podcasts regularly spend 61% of podcast listeners spend more time consuming podcasts than they do watching TV. The ad revenue for podcasts has increased by 1,000% over 5 years, and the expected revenue of 2020 is $695 million. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be rich. That means like everybody who's podcasting, that's what advertising people are paying them. If ideas are the currency of the 21st century, then podcasting is like the gold rush, right? So some of you at this point might be wondering, what the heck is a podcast? I would explain it by saying if President Roosevelt, who did the fireside chats way back in the day, if he were to have originally put those online for download to your computer or mobile device, that would have been a perfect example of a podcast. Back up. So in this bag, I have for you what will influence how you think about podcasts forever. Ready? I bet you've never seen anyone do this at Rotary. It's hard to see my notes. Okay. You see, people know that putting yourself out there and trying something new is the only way to innovate. But right now, if you aren't participating in podcasting in some way, you are missing the innovation wave. But I would argue that almost all of the 800,000 podcasters currently producing work are missing something so simple, so essential to human communication that, it's pretty comical, right? We're gonna take this off. Whew. I'm talking about facial expression, nonverbal communication through body language. Who in here would ever recommend giving a speech with a bag on your head? We don't do that because we know that when you see someone and they're communicating with you in all of the ways that we communicate with people, it builds trust, it builds personal rapport, and it helps you have clear communication with your entire message. Here's an example. Imagine you have a physical product, and I told you one thing that you could add to your production process that would double your market share when it comes to sales. Who wouldn't implement that one thing? Adding video to podcasts is like that because you get to, video is forever, first of all. You're probably not gonna sit down and re-record your audio podcast just to put video in it. You can separate the two, so if you just wanna publish the audio component, you'll always have the video to fall back on because podcasting is not always going to be the same as it is now, and we'll talk about that more later. Don't let being nervous about cameras hold you back. Video podcasting isn't just for celebrities. Celebrities are video podcasting because nonverbal communication is essential, right? And the camera is your friend. My gym teacher used to yell, the backboard is your friend. That was another one of those things. So the camera is your friend. It will listen to you, it won't interrupt, it will hold your secrets, you can erase your mistakes, and it will give you the most honest feedback of your performance than anyone can possibly do. It if you use a video camera, you will become a better communicator in almost every way. So just press the little red button, is what I'm saying. We're actually filming an episode right now. I thought I'd take you for a peek behind the scenes to see how a podcast is made. The technology can be as simple or sophisticated as you make it. Right now, I'm using just a lapel mic attached to an audio recorder like this one. This is our backup audio, just in case something happens to this one back here, which happens every once in a while. And we use 2 video cameras because when you're recording a speech, if you're using the audio, you can clip it and put pieces together and take stuff out, and no one will hear the difference if you mix it well. If you used 1 camera and you tried to do that, people would see the seams. When you use 2 cameras, it's more than just getting 2 different pretty sides of my face. It's like you can help transition to make the seams less noticeable. Speaking of editing, this is what the editing software I personally use looks like behind the scenes. We've got the video way on the top, and then the different audio portions. And this is the audio mixer in here, where you can deepen your voice if you want to. You can add music. You can add graphical elements, slides. If you're using a slide presentation, I could go into this video afterwards and put my slide as part of the presentation of the video. So when you have your presentation complete, you'll export it and upload it to wherever you choose to host your podcast. And a podcast host is like a post office, where something like iTunes is like a little mailbox. You can upload your podcast to a single mailbox, like iTunes, or you can send it to a host to distribute it to a bunch of little mailboxes. So I use Anchor. Their logo's all the way at the top. I use Anchor because it's free, and it does everything that I need it to do. And I also export the video elements of the project to YouTube every time for the visual distribution. Before you release each episode, you want to prepare a written excerpt that kind of describes what your podcast is about. And then, like any other product, you need to market it on social media, direct mail, face-to-face, and let your target audience know that it's available. So I want to emphasize that the money numbers at the beginning sounded really impressive, but this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. I mean, it takes a long time to make any money podcasting, if you're going to make any money at all. And excuse me. So everything that you produce, it needs to be all about what your audience wants to consume. So it's really important to have a genuine message, to talk about something that's important to you, because if you're trying to serve an audience and you're not talking about something that's innate to who you are, you're gonna get off track somewhere. And anybody knows if you're gonna start a business, you need to do about something that you're passionate about, right? Because if you don't, it's gonna get old really quick. So my podcast, Out in Bloomal, produces conversations with local leaders, and our theme is great ideas for future success in business, education, and the community. So we're dedicating special episodes to stay-at-home moms looking to learn new skills to re-enter the workforce. One question that I always get asked, how does a podcast make money? It's actually kind of like Rotary. Now that I'm learning about Rotary, you guys get together and do networking. So podcasts are like that for people who produce them and for the guests on their show. It's a lot of networking, but there's also opportunities for affiliate marketing, sponsorships, physical product sales, online courses, virtual summits, public speaking engagements, consulting, conferences, and fan donations. So lots of stuff, right? If anyone asks, I'm available for all of those things. We're going to move on. Okay, so what does the future of podcasting look like? And this is where it starts to get a little bit more exciting. I think that, and I can only speculate here, but it's kind of an educated speculation, right? So starting this year, we will see corporations and agencies develop their own hosting applications for podcasting. As soon as these platforms are available to accommodate privacy concerns, so a corporation can talk about something and they won't have to worry about their competitor also consuming that podcast, podcasting will become essential for internal communications. As such, the outlook for podcast producers will shift from what's essentially a speculative hobbyist market to that of a sought-after technical skill with reasonable salary expectations, formalized training, and certification opportunities within the global communications marketplace. In the public sphere, over the next few years, podcasting monetization and distribution will also change drastically. Right now, podcasters and advertisers engage each other on kind of a micro scale of calculated one-offs when it comes to exchanging money for advertising. How I see this changing, because it's very different than TV, right? If you produce a TV program, the channel or the network buys the program or funds the program, and then the advertisers buy airtime from the channel. I think that podcasting will move in this direction. So if iTunes wanted to have, one of the top podcasters only produce work for iTunes, because there's like a million different podcasting platforms, it's really ridiculous. So somebody's going to start doing this right now. They're going to say, hey, come do this podcast, but only on my channel. So they'll contract that podcaster and pay them directly. People seeking to advertise then on iTunes would go to iTunes instead of the podcaster. And then they'll add subscription services, kind of maybe like Disney Plus, where you pay a couple bucks a month and have access to those prime podcasts. So we'll probably see the video and audio only options for download side by side. And that's why I want to emphasize everybody I talk to create your video now, because you're not going to go back and do it later. Video is going to become more a part of podcasting than it is now. Once those streaming elements are available, corporations and large businesses will apply those business models to their websites. So big box stores like Best Buy, Walmart, and Target will negotiate. Well, they'll do the same thing as I'm talking about iTunes. And then they'll have these shows on their websites to draw people into their big websites. So Best Buy could do just a show about anything really, but people will come to the Best Buy website to watch that show. And then Best Buy could sell ad space for kind of like product placement in stores. They'll negotiate that as kind of part of that. And then we'll also see early adopters of emotional brand intelligence like Coca-Cola, Wells Fargo, and Budweiser do a similar thing for their websites. So really we're seeing podcasting morphing into more of like a branded TV, but it's not coming through the TV, it's coming through corporations, businesses, and their individual websites. So all in all, podcasting will become an increasingly valuable technical skill sought after by public and private entities for media production and corporate communications. Self-publishing will probably always be around, but just like YouTube changes their advertising model, and it's much harder for anyone to make money on YouTube now, podcasting will be the same way. There'll be less opportunity for independent monetization. But the value, as I see it, of intentional conversations through podcasting, networking and learning new skills, kind of similar to Rotary, will always continue to exist, because as humans we know that's the value, right? So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions. Oh, I forgot about my slideshow. Yes.
I have a question and a comment.
Okay.
Question, what editing software do you use?
I use the Adobe suite. So, yep, we have Premiere. What you saw was Premiere Pro, and is it Audacity, or is that the free one? Audition. Yeah, Audacity is the free version, which is pretty good too.
And in the comment I had, you're absolutely right. It's like the Wild West out there right now, because everybody has their own platform. And prior to, and I agree with you, what's going to happen is is iTunes, Spotify. They're going to buy up all of the major ones. But until then, shows like, and one of the, I think the number one common podcast is My Favorite Murder. They're starting their own network where they are bringing in 10 or 12 shows, and then all that advertising money for those shows all funnel in for their own networks. But that's not sustainable. Like you said, iTunes, Spotify, and whoever is going to buy it all up. So you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, I think fundraising so what does that look like? So I wanted to do a podcast on Child Protection Network. What does that look like? How does that work?
Yeah, so how podcasters do it, I think most people use a service called Patreon. And Patreon is a separate website. You go on and you create a profile for your podcast. And then people can become subscribers to your Patreon account. And you can set up different levels of sponsorship. So if people wanted to contribute $1 a month, right, you'd say, okay, for $1 a month, you'll get maybe a thank you card and maybe a special email from us once a month. You could say for $10 a month, you can get, a T-shirt. And so they kind of differentiate members of partnership through Patreon. I think it's patreon.com. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I'm so new to the technology and podcast world. I'm just So for your podcast, you do a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who do you have on? You have people that are in business and things like that. So advertisers pay you. Is that how that works?
Well, if I were to have advertisers, yes. And so Anchor does this thing where you can record like a 30-second commercial and insert it into your podcast. So you'd say, and now a word from our sponsors, right? And then they do the pre-recorded 30 seconds, and then you continue with your podcast. There's other ways to do it as well. You can make agreements with, if I were to come up to Ken here and say, hey Ken, you wanna advertise on my podcast, we could make a commercial and do the same thing. Another thing people wonder is, does it cost money to be on a podcast as a guest? And from my understanding, I don't know of any podcast, and correct me if I'm wrong, that actually charges people to be on the show with that person, because they help create the content of the show. So it's usually, if not always, a free exchange.
So like being interviewed on the radio, you just say.
I think
Right.
the short answer from my perspective, Sally, is there really isn't any money in it right now. So you don't sell advertising. You don't, unless you hit a home run and you have 2 million subscribers.
Yeah, that's the
Then you can start saying, you can start going to an advertiser and saying, well, I've got 2 million subscribers. I can take 30 seconds out to do a commercial. Are you interested? And then you make money that way. But right now, I think what I'm gathering from Kristen's point and Jason's follow-up about iTunes or whatever, about people, they're really trying to figure out how to make money out of it. Right now, it's the Wild West. It's the glory days for the consumer because it's all out there, it's all free. Ultimately, as they have done with every facet of new media, people are going to figure out how to make money, and then it's not going to be free anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, my partner and I have been doing a podcast for almost 2 years. We're coming up on episode 100, and you do it because you love it.
So it's just like giving out information.
Exactly, and then you get approached once you. In 2 years, we had maybe 5,000 streams, right, which is nothing. And people are getting 22 million a week for big ones, right? And then these are the places the advertisers contact you. And it's always the same people. I mean, like Squarespace, sort of Sleeper, and then they jump to whoever the hot person is at the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like a guaranteed thing. But if you're doing it local like this, it could be a much different animal, like you're saying, because local radio is really going away. And I think what Dan does and what you were doing is going to take the space of that. I mean, if you look at JBC, they're doing national feed stuff now. So this is where we're going to get our local information.
But to get the word out about child protection network, could be a simple conversation between you, Dan, you, Kristen, even the three of you could almost like an interview, broadcast it, put it out there on a social media site, say, hey, this is available if you're interested in learning more about it.
If you guys want to do a regular thing, I can show you what you need to get started and set up. I mean, if you had like weekly or monthly, that was the other question I had for you.
Yeah.
How often are you going to?
We're looking to do a podcast once a week, so about 4 a month. That's kind of what we're expecting to do. And I say we, it's really me and my husband, who's like my cheerleader, and the muscle who carries the suitcase.
More professionally than just a casual conversation with the editing, the clipping, cutting of the voice, merging the audio. So it's not just a conversation with a couple of recordings, it's full blown edited.
Yeah, and I try to make, what I do as much of a visual, like an engaging visual experience, like a movie or a trailer for a movie. More like a trailer for a movie. You got your B-roll footage, which is like the footage that accompanies what you're saying. It's not necessarily the talking heads. And we've done really long podcasts to start out, but I think I'm seeing that people want to consume shorter podcasts. So instead of 45 minutes now, we're going to do 15 minutes and see how that goes. But it's a lot of trial and error. And you have to be okay with making mistakes. You have to be kind of ignorant of like other people judging you and just jump in and try it. And that's most entrepreneurs are like that anyway. But also to your point, podcasting can also be kind of like a billboard for your business. So you're not going to get paid for painting up your billboard, right? But you get paid when somebody notices you and says, hey, can you do this for me? That's another part of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.